and welcome to the Tourmageddon podcast. I am Oscar.
I'm Kenny.
And we are your hosts for today. And this is our first episode. So a lot of things are going to get worked out, a lot of kinks. We're going to go over kind of like what to expect from this podcast.
This isn't fair because I think you know everything to expect from this podcast. You have a cheat sheet, and I'm flying blind here.
I mean, that's part of the fun, you know. You got to go spontaneous right here.
Yeah, spontaneous for me, but not so much for you.
That's how it goes, man. And so yeah, actually, I wanted to start off with a little bit of background so people know who they're talking to. And your background is way more interesting than mine, so you don't have to go into like a crazy detail, but just give us like a little bit of like how you got started in the business, and we're gonna dive right in.
Yeah, lots of poor choices.
Lots of poor choices.
Yeah, that's how you end up here. No, so I guess I've kind of always been fascinated by, shows. I grew up watching, going and getting VHS tapes from the library. Does that date me now?
Yeah,
have we reached a place where like people don't know what VHS tapes are?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned VCR before. People don't know what I'm talking about.
So I'm officially getting into that category. But I used to go and get VHS tapes for concerts like Queen. I vividly remember watching a Queen VHS tape, and especially somebody like that. It was super theatrical. It was big. It was over the top even for that time. So I think that's kind of where it all started for me. Where this addiction to the drug that is touring started.
And I know that especially in this business, from the outside looking in, from somebody that hasn't been like my whole career hasn't been exactly in the touring or concert or anything like that, but just from the outside looking in, I hear touring, I automatically go to rock or the genre of rock and roll. And I know you're a big fan. Or did it start out like that, or it was just kind of like you just wanted to follow what the genre that you really related to?
Yeah, I think maybe it's kind of it was like, oh, something shiny, because literally that's what it was. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a rock fan. I mean, again, grew up listening to Queen. I had all older cousins, so I hung out with them, and so that was, it was a lot of Motley Crue, it was a lot of Guns N' Roses, stuff like that. So that's kind of what I grew up on. I mean, if we're being honest, I kind of grew up in Central Florida. It's kind of like, I guess I could say white trash. That's kind of, but that's kind of where it was. So it was definitely on the weekends. It's, pickup trucks, tailgates, and Guns N' Roses playing on my cousin's truck radio. So that's kind of what I got brought up in. And then I don't know, it kind of always tugged at me. I went to, as I started kind of going through high school, I was going to be a music major, and that was kind of the path that I was headed on. And then I joke with my wife all the time. I saw Mr. Holland's Opus and went, yeah, I'm not going to be a high school teacher for the rest of my life. I need to do something else. And so all through high school and stuff, I kind of, did all the auditorium stuff and theater things and all this stuff. I was kind of like the guy that did those things. And then it just kind of happened. Like it you feel like it should have a more interesting, cooler kind of thing, epiphany moment. It just kind of happened. There were just kind of all these little choices that I made throughout life that kind of got me there, that, I ended up on a tour bus. Right. And at some point during my career, I ended up doing some cool stuff with some pretty cool people. Yeah.
And it's funny because when you start out, especially looking at something that you're not into it yet, like for example, looking at other people, other tours, other bands, you have a certain perspective of, or a certain expectation of what it is or what you think it's going to be. But once you start actually going on these tours and you start doing the work and you realize that it's a grind, it's not as glamorous as what you expected it to be, or was it?
Oh, there's definitely parts that are not glamorous. There's especially festival season. Festival season is never glamorous. It's the bus pulls up, you open the door, you step outside of the bus, and you sink into 3 foot of mud because it's been raining all weekend.
Yeah.
So there's definitely parts that aren't glamorous. I think the thing, and I think most people that have toured will agree with this. I think the thing that probably we all get addicted to, or that we really latch onto, is there's kind of this sense of family that you
develop.
Yeah. And I think some of it is because of all the not glamorous stuff.
Right.
You kind of all end up forming this trauma bond together.
That's where the best bonds are made.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's because the show starts at 7:00 regardless. So it doesn't matter what goes wrong. This stuff has to be up. It has to work.
Right.
So there's this level of stress that happens. And you really do develop kind of this familial relationship with everybody, because you're living on a bus with 11 other dudes. You're week in, week out. If you're weekend warrior, I mean it's still roughly the same. I mean, you're home maybe 2-3 days a week, but the rest of the time you're shoved in this tin can with 11 other people.
Yeah, that could get a little claustrophobic, to say the least.
Oh, it gets a little middle school boys' locker room sometimes too. The smell,
It has to. It's especially like dudes. Are there usually, because from what I've seen so far, I've only seen like one girl on an actual, at least on like the concerts that I've been to or worked at. I've only seen one girl at at the rest, maybe two, but there was like two on that one, and I thought it was usually just guys.
No, I think especially in the last several years, women in the industry it's become a growing thing. And I think it's great. There's a lot of chicks out there that I've worked with that are killer.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think it's all about passion and drive. And so, I can think off the top of my head several of kind of people that I would go, hey, who would fill in for me? And they're not dudes,
Right. Nah, I get that.
So
I get that.
There's
something that they're able to do that, bring to the table that guys don't usually.
Yeah, I think there's a
perspective.
I think, yeah. And I don't know if that's a gender role thing. I don't know. I'm going to be careful getting too far down that road.
It's 2023, yeah.
But I think there definitely is. There's an attention to detail that I think that a lot of the women in the industry that I've met that definitely have way more attention to detail than I do.
Yeah, 100%.
But some of the really kick-ass designers are out there, women. So yeah, I think it's a growing thing. I think it needs to happen more. I think they definitely face, because this was kind of a dude's industry for a long time. I mean, going way back into the day, it was kind of, that
was a standard. It was just guys working. Well, because a lot of it, I mean, from what I see, is like a lot of labor, manual work. So it's like, and it's, again, I'm talking like, what the standard has been since, 80s, 70s, the old it's just a guy has to do that part.
Cut off shorts and the white tube socks,
and like
dudes.
It's not glamorous. So like, why would a woman want to be in a tour bus stuck with like 10 dudes? And
I don't want to be on a tour bus stuck with 10 dudes.
You know what I mean? So it's like a woman's not going to do it. So you would think that that's going for that, but no, I've seen it, and it's like, I think the best show that I've seen so far has had women working on the tour. Like the last one that we went to, or the one that I went to with you, it was I thought it was one of the best ones that I've seen so far. Fantastic stuff. So just to give a little bit of background of me, I'm actually the videographer / media guy for Elite Multimedia, and coming from again, not a solely working on tour or music or stuff like that. And to be honest, man, like I'm not even like concerts. I think I've only been to like 2, and they were like free. Like somebody gave me the tickets to go.
That's the only way I go to them.
You know what I mean? So it was just, I just wasn't a thing.
I shouldn't say that. Literally, that's how I make my living. But.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and I think that actually works in my favor, because I can completely detach myself from what I'm looking at,
Yeah.
from like being like in the audience or being starstruck or anything like that. And I could actually have that like, outside perspective and look at, oh, I could get this and that, whereas I wouldn't have it if I was really into it.
Yeah, well, I think it's funny you say that because that's kind of the thing you get from people on the outside when you kind of talk to them. Oh, this got to be so cool. You get to, it's like hey, it's a job, man, just like everything else, and you don't really get starstruck. Again, you live on buses with these people. Smaller tours, you might be on the bus with the artist.
Yeah,
they're all just people. So it's you get up every morning, you do your gig, and you try to get it done as fast as possible and get back on the bus. But it is you do have to kind of have this detached mentality because people that don't and start in this industry, they generally don't last long because of that. Because you really kind of have to have that separation. You can't be starstruck. You can't, you can't go bothering the artist, that kind of stuff. And if you do, you're not going to last long.
Yeah. And that's, to touch back on what you said, like most people will say that, like they'll be like, hey, I'm working at this, I'm going to this concert, working on this tour, whatever. Oh my God, that's fantastic. That's so awesome. You must love your job. And it's like, you do, but you it's not as glamorous as you think it is. And, for the most part, I think that's, also the traveling, is a big deal. And I remember the first time I spoke to some of the guys that were on tour, they were talking about how sometimes they go 6 months at a time. Yeah. And I think that's like the shorter end of some of these tours.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you get into the pop world, think about Taylor Swift's out right now. She's playing multiple nights in multiple cities, so those guys are not going home. I mean,
So would you say that the more popular the artist, the longer the tour would be?
Yeah.
That's insane. What's the longest one you've been on?
I want to say consecutively, it was probably about 5 months. I think there was like a 10-day break.
5 months?
Yeah.
Straight?
Yeah.
On the
road?
road?
There was like a 10-day break in the middle.
Okay.
But I'll call it, for the most part, it was.
10 days compared to 5 months is not even a fraction. Well, it's a very small fraction.
It didn't feel like any time off.
Yeah.
So
I bet.
I'm pretty sure my parents visited during that 10 days. So it definitely didn't feel like time off.
Yeah, right. You just want to chill and relax.
Yeah. Well, and that's the hard part. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this. And this was a reason that I didn't do well in weekend warrior touring is kind of, you have to shift gears when you come home, or at least I do. And I've talked to other guys that have similar issues. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to shift gears when you come home, and it would take me a couple of days to kind of
go back to default.
Yeah. Reacclimate. Cause your life literally changes when you're out there. Your catering is, breakfast is at 8, lunch is up at noon or 1, dinner's up at 5. And you kind of just go through these motions, and you have a schedule. And I would come home and I wouldn't feed myself because I'm just
right. You're expecting for like lunch call.
Right. I'm waiting for catering to be up. And it causes other issues too, not to get too heady, but I mean, if you're married, that's a whole thing. My wife struggled with that. And again, you're kind of being a jerk because you're trying to come back home. And if you're a weekend warrior tour, by the time I would get acclimated to being home, it was time to leave again.
Right.
So the 2 or 3 days that she got of me, it's kind of a jerk. Like because I was just,
you were still in tour mode. Yeah.
I was in this weird limbo.
Yeah.
So it has some rippling effects. And
it's almost like time stopped.
Yeah.
And then it
does for you, but it doesn't for everybody else.
And that's the part that really messes with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Cause I come home, and for me, in my head, home was exactly the way it was when I left. Well, 5 months goes by. That's not the case anymore.
Oh yeah. I was just thinking about the weekend part. Imagine 5 months. It'll just be like, hey man, did you watch that game last week? It's like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh yeah. No, you definitely get disconnected. It's real easy to get disconnected. Yeah, especially, if you're grinding pretty hard, some of these tours, especially maybe kind of a smaller mid-range tour where you're really humping it all day long. It's hard to carve out time to talk to people.
Of course.
on the phone, depending on where you are in the world. You know, it's hard to talk to people, so you're trying to get in those couple of minutes here and there
Yeah.
to talk to people. And sometimes your choices are get a couple of minutes to yourself finally and kind of, you know, have a rest, or get on the phone and talk to somebody else. And so those can kind of be stressful decisions, I guess.
100%. I mean, I'm not in a tour like that, but I just go on some of these, you know, sometimes we have to travel for these things, like, you know, 3-4 days, and that's nothing compared to 5 months or anything like of the sort. And I'll come back home and I'll feel like what you're talking about, not to that big scale, but just like, I'm like, oh man, I'm back again. I got to get acclimated again. And then, you know, I'll talk to my wife about this. She's referring to something that happened over the past couple of days. I have no idea what she's talking about. And I'm like, you know, our conversation, I mean, we do have more to talk about, but then it's like the kids also, they're like, you know, trying to play with me, trying to do this. And I'm like, oh, that's right, I have children. You know, get back to that. And that was only a few days, and so much happened in those days. I could just imagine that long.
Yeah, I think of it, it's kind of like, you know, when you're together, you're kind of moving on this track together. And then when you go off and get on tour, you know, you go out, the tracks start moving at different speeds. Yeah. And so when you get back, it takes a while for everything to kind of sync back up. And there's this weird,
that's a good analogy
in between. Yeah.
It's a good analogy.
But it can definitely be rough. You know, it's, there's, you know, it's terrible. There's a lot of guys out there that relationships don't work because of that. I bet that's like a common issue within the industry. It has to be. I'm sure that I'm sure there's some statistic out there, but it's definitely tough. You know, and it's a tough thing to give up when you get out there. Again, that whole kind of camaraderie, you build this family relationship with all these people. It's really, really tough. You know, if someone gave you the ultimatum to, hey, it's either me or that. Right. That's a tough thing to, you know, I experienced that. It was. Oh,
you experienced the ultimatum?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
You know, we had a series of very unfortunate events happen. And I wasn't home to help deal with those things. And it was kind of the straw that broke the camel's. And she was 100% right. You know, it was a great move for me. Yeah. But I didn't know what I was going to do. Right. Like this was what I've done forever. Right. And you kind of look at it and go, well, is this a marketable skill anywhere else? Like, right. Like I haven't even looked outside this industry. Right. Is there anything I could, or how do I convince people that all these skills that I have are marketable in some other place? You know, I wear black shorts and I can do all this stuff in 6 hours. Nobody cares about that. Right. But yeah, so it's a hard thing to walk away from because it kind of starts to become your identity a little bit. You have a family there. It's a tough thing to walk away from. Now, would that, because I see that a lot, and talking to a bunch of guys, I could see that a lot of people, or at least the industry is very, the circle is very small. Yeah. Compared to other industries. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And I was, at first, I'm like, maybe there's like the entry to this industry is not as wide open or is not as popular anymore. Or could it be a bit of like kind of just people kind of look out for each other, almost like I was gonna say a remark, but I don't know how that's gonna go over. But you know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like a circle. This is us. We'll keep it in here. You're my friend. Hey, what do you think about this job? There's definitely it is definitely a small world. Doing things poorly or doing things to wrong other people in this circle, it will definitely get around. Yeah. But with that, I think we have this problem right now in the industry too, where post-COVID we lost a lot of guys that went on to other things and stuff like that. Right. And so now trying to get new people in, it is kind of this weird thing that's happening because I think we are kind of shut off to everybody else kind of coming in because we get we know who we're comfortable with and we know who we want to work with and but it and I think that's another cool part though is because I can run into you for the first time on tour and I guarantee you that we know 4 or 5 people.
Right. Within, you guys are
within
kind of the same people. Yeah.
So that's a super cool aspect. As far as it being closed off in like comparatively now versus, before, maybe, I don't know.
I mean, you brought up COVID, and I think that's a big thing that changed not only, I mean, I'm sure it changed other industries, but this industry specifically, because
huge,
you have to deal with events that are happening. You have to attend in person, and you couldn't do that anymore. People automatically, well, they don't know what the future is going to hold for that industry. So I'm assuming a lot of them were like, all right, well, this stinks. So what am I going to do now? Because I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't know what my job security is anymore. And a lot of talent might have left the industry because of that, and now you have this like new guys coming in and they're not experienced, and then what happens is that like weird dichotomy where it's like, all right, well, you're not experienced.
Dichotomy, big word.
And then it's like you don't know what it's like. I'm not gonna hire you because you don't have the same experience as this other guy that's been doing it for like 20 years. And then it's like, well, how is that person gonna learn? And I guess you could argue that that's the problem in a lot of industries anyways, but I would say specifically with this one, since it's a lot of connections and who you know.
Well, and it's I mean, you're exactly right, because I think it was made worse after COVID because like the dollars weren't there. Right. So whereas before maybe it's like, hey, I could hire the guy I want, and then I could hire this guy on as a second, and kind of he could.
Oh, okay.
Because now kind of being outside of the touring industry and doing some more of the corporate shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's a thing that we would generally do is, hey, I've got my A-list guy, and I've got these other guys that maybe work in the shop, or other guys that we kind of want to bring up, and we're going to send them on as a second, and we can make all those numbers work. Well, post-COVID, those numbers, financially, people were not spending the kind of money they were before.
Of course.
So that gets harder to do. The other thing that I think shifted for us was we've never shut down like this.
Right, like nothing like that has impacted the industry in such a way.
Because I mean, the kind of the accepted knowledge is that this industry is recession proof.
Right.
Clearly, we're not like global plague proof. Because we found that out the hard way.
Yeah.
So there was definitely there was a lot of guys. If they were A-list guys, they're A-list guys for a reason, because they're problem solvers. They think through issues.
Right.
And so they found other ways to make money. And then because it wasn't like the tap just got turned right back on, it was this kind of slow trickle back on. Those guys were slow to come back.
Right.
And with reason. I mean, they watched their entire industry just shut down in a matter of days.
Right.
So, there was a really rough time trying to find people to gig, and then there was, we had all the kind of, help from the government as far as we were extending, unemployment or adding more. And if you worked a day, you could lose that. So you had guys wanting to come out and gig, but that was only one gig. And they can't risk giving up everything else, as far as that unemployment money for this one show, even though they would much rather be doing that. Right.
And that's a funny thing you say, because, it is. I would imagine it is recession proof, just because people always want to have a good time and enjoy themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a form of escapism.
Right.
That's kind of what it's kind of the drug we peddle is. You kind of want to forget about your problems,
even if it's for a couple hours.
Yeah, I want to go to a show.
Right, and then COVID just completely turned that upside down.
Yep.
And then the ones that were able to pivot were the ones that came out winning. And I think that's one of the things about Elite that I've really, respected, just how they were able to navigate and still come out on the other side. And I'm sure it was, it was difficult and things like that. There's a lot of hiccups that came about. But from your experience, what do you think was the one thing that kind of really, what separates them from the rest?
I think there's a couple things. I mean, when that happened, the room we're sitting in right now is a demo space for us and our sister company Pixelflex. Shout out to Pixelflex. We could scroll them across the bottom.
Bing, right there.
So obviously we weren't doing demos a whole lot because and at one point we weren't even allowed to occupy the office, I think.
Oh, really?
Like there was a city ordinance or something. So
right. So nobody
could even come into the office. But shortly after kind of all that, kind of the dust settled and we kind of knew where we were going to be for the quote unquote long term. The production management staff just kind of started getting together and going, okay, what do we do?
Right.
And upper management kind of, I guess I could say they kind of gave us carte blanche to just figure this out. How do we bring dollars in? And so we turned this room into a live streaming space. I won't say that it was like the creme de la creme. We used what we had.
Right.
I want to say we were probably one of the first ones. I'm sure that somebody will correct me and tell me, oh my, no, you were number 3. Right. But I want to say that we were one of the first ones that kind of jumped on that model.
Nice.
And we had a lot of artists in here. I think Casey Musgraves came in and did some stuff.
Nice.
A lot of the like morning talk shows and stuff like that, they weren't flying people out there to do the music segments. So those artists were having to find places in town to do them. So we did several of those.
Oh, so they would perform.
So they would perform here and then they would just send that recording to Good Morning America or, whatever. I think like we were on Fallon.
Oh,
we ended up being on several of those throughout the course of that. But
that's insane.
I kind of jumped the shark and didn't really answer your question about what makes us different. We're just super smart. Okay. That's what makes us
no,
different.
you did answer. I mean, that's basically, it's like, because a lot of people will, and a lot of businesses will tend to do, and it's like a human thing, is like, they'll tend to shut down and like, oh, well, let's write it out, see what happens.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, it's like, you said it, you're definitely one of the first. So it's like that, that culture to actually give you guys the encouragement to like, all right, guys, let's problem solve our way out of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, and I think, our leadership definitely it's that mentality. It's, let's look at the problem. Let's solve the problem. Let's work the problem.
Right.
So I would say for the most part, we're not kind of people, that just kind of freeze.
Yeah.
It's, they say fight or flight, but there's a third one in there and there's freeze. And a lot of people,
freeze,
when faced with that kind of situation, freeze. So,
yeah.
Like I think we built this room out in literally like 2 days.
Really?
This
is a big room. I don't know if you guys could tell from the camera, but
and so it was this house. I want to say this room, it's like 97. I think it's like close to 100 by 50 or something like that.
Yeah.
So we did one half of it. And so cameras were all on this side, stage and everything were that side. And there were multiple iterations of it. The first one was super simple.
Yeah.
We kind of just got stuff up to make it look halfway decent on camera. And then as we progressed, like we built a stage in here that was lined in LED. We had, all kinds of other stuff that we added. But for the most part, I think our management here, our leadership here, it really is about solving the problem. Let's just get together. Let's solve the problem.
Yeah, no. And it's like, we're in 2023. That was like 3 years ago. And you can still see how that's affected in a positive way, like how decisions are made and all that. Mm-hmm. And the new kind of, I guess you could call it approach that they take on like different jobs. Like you could just see that right away. And what I want to ask you was like, what are like the soft, because we know you got the hard skills to do the job and do what you do and all that. But like, what were the soft skills that really helped you make the jump from, to where you are, like from where you started, from where you are right now? Because there's definitely, definitely underrated, but I think it's definitely one of those things where it was important, vital.
I'll be completely honest with you. Soft skills was a term that I did not understand before coming.
You're not the only one, man. I'm sure that's like I think that's like a more recent term now too.
Well, it's just, I'm sure that I had plenty of quote unquote soft skills while touring, but it's just not something you think about.
Right.
Cause other than the guys that I'm on a bus with every day, the people that I'm quote unquote leading throughout the day I'm never going to see them again.
Right.
or it's going to be a while before I see them again.
Right.
So I'm not overly concerned with building a relationship and having,
Right. So there were some things that you had to kind of obviously like pivot from and just
yeah,
you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's definitely things that you I think on the road you can kind of be a bull in a china shop sometimes to just power your way through things.
Yeah.
That doesn't work when you have to see those same people day in, day out.
Yeah.
You have to, every problem can't be a nail.
Right. Right. You have to kind of like malleable and
you got to kind of learn how to deal with some of that. And that was a journey for me. I mean, I think I lucked out. It was like perfect timing. I came off the road. I made the decision in the beginning of 19, and I think I started here in August of 19.
Wow. So you just like
literally
right
just
there.
slid in right at the right time.
Meant to be, I guess you could say.
Yeah. No, I think it definitely was. But so these couple of years, it's definitely been a journey for me, and it was a hard transition. Again, this idea of a 9-to-5 job, Monday through Friday,
the corporate side of it.
Yeah, that was a hard thing to get used to.
Because the touring is anything but corporate.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think corporate's definitely squeezed in there. It is not what it was in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
But for the most part, it is. I will say they're the closest thing to pirates that are left. We plant our flag in one city and sail to another one, and but the soft skill journey was definitely a thing that I'm still going through. I mean, you can read so many books.
Yeah,
it will never prepare you quite enough
to handle the.
Well, it's definitely when you especially when you start managing other people.
Yeah.
Because, and I think in touring, there's a lot of similar personalities. Cause like, if you want to do that, I think you have a certain personality.
Right.
When you leave that, you learn that there are other personalities and they are not like yours.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that has been a big thing for me to learn is, how do I respond to people? Things that don't matter to me matter to other people and matter a lot to other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just for me, maybe that's not a thing,
Right.
But it is a thing to somebody else, and that's important.
Right. Stepping into other people's shoes.
Yeah.
Taking other people's point of view.
Yeah, 100%. So that's. It's still a journey for me. We'll put it that way.
You're not quite 100% there yet, but you're on your way.
I don't think I'll ever be 100% there. But I don't know that anybody can be 100%.
I was going to say, it's like one of those like perfection things. It's like, you're never going to really get there, but just you trying to get there or just better it, it's going to make you that much better. And I could see it in, from a personal take on it. I could see that your leadership style has, been able to navigate that, corporate-y, but still you're still relatable to the people you work or that are under you and that you manage. So it's almost like, he's my boss, but I don't feel like I'm being hovered over, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
I'm not micromanaged. I'm not like Mad Men type of style.
I can't do that.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing.
I couldn't function that way.
Right. I don't think anybody can really.
Yeah.
Well, they can, but they shouldn't tolerate that.
Yeah. And that's a thing that I've learned is, for me personally, I just kind of need to know what pasture I get to play in. Just tell me where the fence is, and then I'll go do my thing. But there are some people that kind of need a checklist.
Right.
That's okay. That's not me. Even that can be a little bit much for me.
Yeah.
And so learning kind of how, okay, this group of people needs this group of people needs this, and then everybody can be successful.
Yeah.
But over just hovering over people, man, I can't do it.
So good, man. So good. It's like kind of reminds you of like, it's like your parents, it's like the one thing that you didn't like about your parents, that they were always on your case. And it's like, you get out of that and now you have a job and now you have some other person doing the same thing. It's like,
the difference is I get a paycheck, but at what point is it worth the?
I was going to say, at what point does the paycheck really offset that disgusting feeling you get when you go to work? You know what I mean? But
I think at the end of the day, it's I want to make sure that everybody has the tools they need to do their job.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want you to go off and do your job.
Right.
You know, and if I'm not giving you the tools, come find me. Let's talk about it.
Right. You're there every step of the way, as it should.
And there's some nuance to that. You know, that statement's pretty broad, but there's some nuance to that.
True.
You know,
that's true.
Maybe there's some more follow up on my end to make sure you have those tools. But
right. Of
kind
course.
of looking at the broad picture, it's
what
do you need? I'll get you those things you need. And you know, I had a boss early on, kind of in between some touring time. I worked for a broadcasting company, a television broadcasting company, and I had a boss, and he wasn't an overly technical guy, at all, but he was probably one of the best bosses I ever had. And kind of his thing was, I exist to remove obstacles. Like
That's awesome.
that is my whole job, is I exist to remove obstacles. And he was great at it.
It's a breath of fresh air, man.
Yeah. And so I try to take that approach somewhat. You know, not every obstacle can be moved.
Yeah.
Not every obstacle is mine to move.
Right.
But I try to look at it through that lens. I think the more colorful version of that I've heard is being a shit umbrella. I'm just there to make sure that it doesn't get on everybody else.
There you go. That's a fantastic analogy, though. Like, I could totally picture that. Yeah.
You know, because if they're dealing with all the other kind of shenanigans, they're not doing their job.
Right.
So.
Yeah, definitely. So let's move into, just because I know that this is the first episode and people are going to want to know anyways. And at least we could check back and be like, all right, we talked about that in the first episode. So you gotta explain the shirt, man. I mean, I'm sure nobody will notice as much, but or maybe they will. But you have to, like, what goes on behind. So two things. You got to explain the shirt, and usually people have nicknames on the road. I learned that, and they all have that. And yours isn't anything explicit. So I'm like, I have to ask you about this.
Okay.
So, like, if you could break it down for us.
So there is an LD that everybody knows this guy. Shout out to Cosmo.
Okay. Lighting director.
Yeah. He's been with Aerosmith forever. Super nice guy. And so he, like, if you see any photos of Cosmo, he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. So I say all that to say I didn't steal it from him, or it was not my intention. It actually happened when I was out with Sammy Hagar. Myself and our front of house guy at one point just decided to kind of be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And we used to do funny stuff in the back lounge. Like, we would go buy feather boas. We'd have weird hats, and it would just kind of be this thing.
Props. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just kind of migrated out.
Yeah.
And so, Ace and I got, I think we went to Walmart, and
of course,
randomly there were just Hawaiian shirts. Like, we didn't have a plan of what we were going to get, but there were Hawaiian shirts. So we got Hawaiian shirts.
Nice.
And then it just kind of stuck from there. And then, so every show that I've done, I've worn a Hawaiian shirt. I actually have one of the last artists I was with. I have a Hawaiian shirt with his face on it. Like, it's peppered.
I've seen those. Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
I was like,
so it's like peppered all over that
Nice.
shirt. So I've just kind of always, it's kind of my show attire is camouflage shorts and a Hawaiian shirt.
It's fantastic. That's your shtick, man.
It is definitely shtick.
Like Picasso said, good artist copy, great artist steal.
Yeah.
And
we'll steal it all day long.
That's what I'm saying.
Sorry, Cosmo.
So, and then your nickname on tour, what was it? Just for everybody listening.
So it was another honorific that was brought to you by the fine crew on Sammy Hagar. It's Flounder.
Flounder.
Yeah. So it comes from Animal House.
Animal House. Flounder.
Yeah. So he was the chubby kid.
Yeah.
That was in the movies, and he's like at the very end when they go after Niedermeyer, he walks in this door and he's like, "I have 10,000 marbles, please."
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was him? They call him Flounder?
So his nickname was Flounder. I honestly don't know I don't remember how it happened.
Yeah.
I do remember.
That's the beginning of every good nickname stories. Like, I don't know how it happened, but it happened. Stuck with me. Yeah.
I'm sure there were things that we can't talk about, like that's how we got to the place that it happened.
Yeah.
But I do remember, I'm pretty sure Ace and Jim are the two that kind of decided this.
Yeah.
Pretty sure we were watching Animal House in the back lounge.
Nice.
And it was either Ace or Jim that said that was going to be my nickname. And when I said why, he just said, why not?
That's the best. That's the best question answer to anything. It's why not?
Yeah. So there's, I think on my big work box, there's literally a giant picture of Flounder.
Which is another thing. Everybody has a work box, and
yep.
I'm kind of digging that. So running up on the end of this episode, is there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
Man, I don't know. I feel like we were kind of all over the place. I hope when we get this in the can, it's cohesive since this is the first one.
It's always cohesive. 100%.
So I read it. Actually, I think Ben, one of our production managers, account managers, sent me this thing that said if we make it to 21 episodes, we're like in the top like 5%.
Oh yeah, I thought it was like less than that.
Well, so apparently it's like 98% of podcasts don't make it past one episode.
Really? 98?
Something like that. And then like of that leftover percentage, like only, 2 or 3% of that or something make it to 21 episodes.
That's crazy.
So that's our goal, is we have to make it to at least 21, and then we can just quit.
After the 21
episodes. Episode 21 drops, we can just quit.
And we can just quit just to say we beat the statistic.
Right. We're like in the top.
I like that, man. That's a challenge. That's a challenge right there.
No, I don't know that I have anything to say. I hope we make it to 21.
I believe we will make it to 21.
I feel like we've managed to do this whole thing. I don't think there was a lot of dead air.
No, I don't think there was any dead air, really.
I think I kept the cussing and the ums to a minimum. So that's a win for me.
That is a win. I'm sure that'll change when we have some other people in here. But as long as we, give the good stuff, it'll be good to go. You know what I mean?
I think at some point we're going to have the CEO on this show. Can we call it a show? Is it a show now?
I think it's officially a show.
Okay.
I think it's officially a show.
At some point,
once we hit the intro music, it was a show.
It was a show. Shout out to Rode for the killer intro music.
Killer intro music, man.
They
had stock intro music.
So I think we're gonna have the CEO on. It's probably one of the next few.
Yes.
And then we've got a couple other people already kind of lined up. Some industry people, some LDs, some maybe. We've talked to a couple artists, so maybe we'll have some artists on.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, we're going to have a lot of different perspectives on the industry and a lot of names that you may know and may not know behind the scenes, and that make it happen. And I think this will definitely give people a different perspective of what goes on behind the scenes and the things that happen behind the scenes to make such I would say amazing events happen. So that's one of the things.
I also feel like I should pitch my book coming up, or my stand-up special at Zany's.
You should,
like
man.
At the end of this, I feel,
he's going to be at Caroline's all week.
Please check out my book. It comes out June 1st. No, I do not have a book. Nobody wants to read that. No, I think this has been great.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. So we're going to end the episode here. Stay tuned. This episode may or may not make it. I may or may not cut this out. And, the whole point is to be organic and show you guys everything that we got.
Love it.
All right. So thanks for listening. And until next time, you already know who it is. Tourmageddon, and we're signing out.